Hello and welcome to Jules Investigates. You caught me right as Super Bowl is settling in. For those that don't know Super Bowl, she is a feral cat that likes to sit on my lap. So she's going to be with us tonight. How's everybody doing? Welcome to Jules Investigates. I am the Squeegee of Justice. This is Trial TV Live. And we have, as always, Jules brings us very, very important issues and topics. And tonight is no different. We have two incredibly special guests with us, Victoria Maxwell and Jimmy Dulin. We will be discussing Devin Perkins, who is Victoria's son. And Jimmy is the father of Alexandra, or Allie. And the backstory, briefly, is that in 2022, Devin was driving home with his girlfriend, Allie, and their friends, Kyle and Ava. And they were hit head-on by a drunk driver, Mr. Petry, who had been drinking for at least 6 hours. He was driving the wrong way on a country road in Florida. Large road, wasn't 95, and it certainly wasn't, a small state road, but it was a pretty large road, but no lights. He didn't have lights on. There were no street lights. And Petry slammed into these kids. And yes, I will call them kids because they were, in their 20s, early 20s. Unfortunately, Kyle, Ava, and Allie lost their lives. Which is a terrible thing to be, in and of itself. But what's more terrible is that Petry took a plea deal and the state decided to go after Devin. And in September of last year, he was found guilty by a jury. And the reason we're bringing you this tonight, we did a stream with Victoria and Jules back in December, but tonight we're bringing you this stream because there was an appeal for Devin. And that was last Friday, January 31st. So that's kind of the backstory. I'm going to bring out Jules now. She can pick it up from there. And then we will bring out our very special guests, Victoria and Jimmy. So hello, Jules. How are you, my friend?
I'm fine. Thank you, Chris. It's been a minute. So nice to see you again.
It has been a minute. And how are you doing today?
Today was a good day.
Today was a good day. Nice. Well, we like good days. We like good days. We like good days. Yeah.
So do I. I'm really very excited about this evening to talk about the hearing. Also to get to speak with Jimmy Dulin. I was able to speak with him earlier in the month, last month, on the phone, and he's very personable, and he has a lot to add to this story. So I've made it no secret, and I think you're pretty much on the same page with me, Chris, is that we feel that Devin has been overcharged in this. I think the only thing that he should have been charged with was the speeding ticket. Yeah. So, and unfortunately, I just think that this is, malicious prosecution, for lack of a better term. And, he's facing better than 30 years in prison. And, he was 22 years old when this happened. And you're right. They are kids, Chris. I agree with what you said. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a terrible situation that is getting worse, but it could be better, at least for Devin, at least for one person, and then a family. And then maybe that rolls out to other people that have been affected by this. But it's like they're meaning the state, the prosecution is making a bad situation worse. Instead of just letting it go.
They are. So. I agree. And here's the thing. If they get away with this, then here for us in Florida, I don't know how other states would react, but definitely for Floridians, this opens up the door for them to prosecute. It's just setting a very dangerous precedent. You know,
I agree.
It's not right. It's not right.
I agree. All right. Well, are you ready to bring out our guests?
I am.
Okay. All right. Victoria, we will bring you and Jimmy to the stage. How are you guys tonight?
Doing fantastic. Hey, Jimmy.
Good. Hi, beautiful.
Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Sweet.
I know. Thank you guys. Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead, Jules.
Thank you. No, I was saying, I'm going to say thank you as well. Before we get started into the meat of the hearing, I mean, our audience knows the background of the case. But before we get into the meat of the hearing, the first thing I want to say, I've said this before to Jimmy, but, I want our chat, and Chris has said it as well. We can't express our deepest condolences for your loss. So we want you to know that, Jimmy. And I think it's extremely commendable that you, your wife, and your son are being so supportive of Devin and his family through this horrific time in your life that happened to your family. And that's not going to go unnoticed from anyone. You standing up and doing what you do. And I'd like to start this off with Jimmy. Before we get into the trial, tell us about Allie. Tell us about the things that she loved to do, her likes, her dislikes. Just tell us about Allie.
Mashed potatoes, sushi, and macaroni and cheese. Those are her likes.
I would say, yeah. Amen to that.
Those are her favorite. Those are her favorite foods. Geez, her likes. So first off, I guess for those that don't know our family, Allie and I were cut from the same cloth, and my beautiful wife and my son were cut from the same cloth. So we had a good, even family for bargaining. So when Allie and I wanted to push the envelope and wanted to fly high and yell from the mountaintops or jump off the mountain or whatever it may be, we had the two more reserved in JD and Tamara to balance us out. So anyway, we are a great little family. Allie, I guess some of the things that people don't know, she was a straight A student in school. She got in trouble one time in high school. Otherwise, she was a cheerleader, a dancer, the defender of anybody who was otherwise, I don't know what you call it, but intimidated by or lacked the security, the self-security or self confidence in elementary, grade school, etc. She was the one who was always assigned to sit next to a child who may have some sort of learning challenge. Because Allie was always very well liked and very well known, and I guess the most appropriate word would be popular. Despite all that, what Allie had more than 99% of the people you meet in this world is confidence. And so she would challenge anybody if it was in defense of somebody else. So anyway, she was a beautiful young lady. She certainly, with all of her good, she's like everybody else. She had her flaws. At 18, mom and dad didn't know anything, and she knew everything. And we had some run-ins then, but ultimately, we are a very tight-knit, close, loving family. My wife and I have been married 26 years. We've been together almost 30 years, and our kids only know, Tamara and I, and being together, and I don't know. We've had a beautiful life. Actually, it's somebody said to me, "I don't know how you do it," and I'm like, "Well, I'm 54 years old. I've had 51 amazing years and 3 years of hell."
Yeah.
So when you look at it from a percentage perspective, despite how difficult and how much pain, the reality is I've had an amazing life.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Well, now in today's world, that's a very rare commodity in today's world. For those that aren't aware, Allie was also very well known as Allie Spice on TikTok. So
Allie,
Jimmy,
Allie D Spice XO.
Okay, LED Spice XO.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you a question. How does it feel to know that your daughter was an internet sensation? When did you find out, and what was your initial thoughts on it?
Well, I razzed her about all of this stuff because, we talked about it. She would approach me and ask me for help from a business perspective. But in terms of building her following, etc., she did that on her own. But from a business and from contracts and things like that, I would get involved. How did I first find out? So I would say when she was in the Washington Post, and she was in what the heck is the online news thing that's so popular? I don't know. She was published as being the ungrateful server because her and another girl did a TikTok video when she worked probably 6-8 months at Hooters in Savannah, Georgia. And they did a TikTok video on their tips. And this one particular table tipped her $10, asked for an iced tea to go. She went and got the iced tea. When she came back, they had taken the 10 and left a 5. And this was on like a $100 some odd tab. And she was explaining that she only got a $5 tip on this. And people she rolled her eyes. And so she got labeled the ungrateful server.
Wow.
And that was pretty big because, then we saw our daughter on all over the news. I mean, national news channels and stuff like that. But I would say the big things were she was at home. It's August of 22, sometime in there. I don't know exactly when, but we were at a little restaurant meeting her grandparents, my wife's parents. And when we walked in, a young lady walked up and said, "Oh my God, are you Allie? Are you Allie Spice?" And that was the first time we had, as a family, had experienced that piece of it. But from that point forward, there was never a time that we went out that somebody didn't notice her and somebody didn't come over and ask for a photograph or a hug or whatever, some sort of acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. So, but I teased her all the time.
She sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I sorry, go ahead. Well, I used to tease her and just tell her that, well, why are you so wildly popular? And she said, because I'm authentic. And I said, I think it's because you're cute. And so we went round and round about cute or authentic.
Oh, typical dad. Yeah, typical dad. So,
if I may, Jules, real quick, I have a question for Jimmy. How did Allie or Alexandra? How did she accept that fame? Was it because it sounds like it might have been quick? It sounds like it was one one video and she exploded, or was it kind of slow? And then how did she deal with that?
Well, I mean, it built over time. So first off, before TikTok, TikTok's platform used to be called Musical.ly, and Hallie, of course, explained this to me. But she was on Musical.ly, and this is junior high, late elementary, so somewhere 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and she had like 50,000 followers back then, singing songs. So it was a gradual thing that just seemed to build over time. You know, it did blow up at one point in time. I mean, there was a point in time where you could sit there and she'd hold her phone and you would watch. I mean, in an hour's time, you could see 10,000 new followers. It was just, it was absolutely insane. But it was a combination of, certainly Hooters was a big deal. That was an exciting moment in her career in terms of this influencing. But she did some modeling things. She was in several music videos with performers, singers. She was on a billboard in Los Angeles on Sunset Strip that she posed for, and lots of clothing lines. She had a bra line that with in conjunction with the Little Bra Company. So I don't know, lots and lots of things.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I had no idea, to be quite honest. So I'm really glad that you're sharing this with us, because it's giving me a well-rounded picture, because I've just, in the research that I've done, I've seen pictures, I've read articles, but it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear
when you asked about the fame and how did she handle it. I will tell you this: the best thing I can tell you, well, a couple things. Number one, she really didn't elaborate on any of that with us. She would share with us the number of people that had begun following her, but we didn't have conversations about fame or any of that kind of stuff. It was just conversations around that she was enjoying what she was doing, and she enjoyed talking with people, etc. But here's the best thing I can say to you. When we were at this little restaurant, now we're in Indianapolis, Indiana, we're meeting her grandparents. We're going west outside of the city of Indianapolis, which means we're going towards cornfields and soybean fields and not much city. We're in a little restaurant, and this girl comes up and asks if she's Allie, and she says yes. And the young lady says that I messaged you one time and you never responded. And my daughter stood up, hugged her, apologized. They did pictures together, and she's like, I'm so sorry. I never would have done that on purpose. But the moral of the story is, if you didn't recognize my daughter, she certainly wasn't going to tell you that that's what she did. It was her thing, but it wasn't, it didn't define her. She enjoyed it. She loved what she was doing, but it was unlike most people would handle it. I would say it was not as important as you might presume it would be.
Yeah. Did Allie have plans for the future? Was she talking about becoming a model, becoming an actress, doing something beyond TikTok? Did she ever talk to you guys about that?
Well, so my wife and I are conservatives, and we wanted her to be a Fox News girl. And she said, and she told my wife, we talk about this all the time. She's like, "Oh, Mom, I can be so much more than that." So yes, she had lots of aspirations.
Yeah, setting your sights high. I like it. Nice.
Fast forwarding, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I was going to bring Victoria in and see what her thoughts are, but I'll leave it up to you guys. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to fast forward to Devin steps into, or not steps in, but they meet each other. Now, I do know the story on how they met, which is adorable. And if Victoria and Jimmy would like to expound on that, I think I think it's an adorable story on how Devin and Allie met. So if either Victoria or Jimmy, one of you would like to, and Victoria, you did meet Allie, correct?
I met her via a FaceTime videos, and that was huge. That's huge coming from her. If you see me jump up a little bit ago, it's because Devin tried to call me twice for a midnight call.
We've never compared
I'm
stories,
so
Victoria.
sorry.
I'd love to hear your version of how they met.
Well, for actually, the story of how they met, I did get from you, Jimmy. But
okay.
I
So
think
that's
I've
going to
said
be the same version.
It is the same version. But the one thing that I think I told Tamara, I don't know if I ever told you, Devin has always told me, Mama, I'm not going to bring girls home. You know what I mean? I'm just not going to. You're not going to be involved. And when I heard through conversations that Allie, my heart, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a name. This is something. Because that's not my son, And right at Allie's birthday, they were out in Las Vegas, and they were at the Grand Canyon, and we had our FaceTime call, and I got the introduction, and my heart literally, I said, Vegas, face, I see in my boy. I went to my safe, and I have my wedding set from my first marriage that I'm saving for Devin. And I literally took it out to look at it to see if it needed repair or anything, just because.
Oh my goodness!
I could see. I know my son, and it just warmed my heart. I said, they're gonna elope. Coincidentally enough, I mean, I eloped. Well, I didn't elope, but I got married out in Vegas, so that was my thought at the time. I didn't get to meet her in person. I got the video, FaceTime, but I could see. He just lit up.
And when was that, Victoria? When
was in November. That was at Allie's celebration of her 21st birthday. They had gone out to, was it the Hello Kitty? Jimmy, was it the Hello Kitty?
They went out to Vegas, and then they went to the Grand Canyon, and Allie rented a yurt, Hello Kitty yurt in the desert.
Nice.
Well, all I thought was Vegas marriage. I better check that ring.
There's a YouTube video that Devin edited and produced for Allie that my baby girl is dancing and twerking and doing all the stuff that she wanted to do, hanging out at the yurt with her boyfriend.
That's funny. A Hello Kitty yurt. That's awesome.
She was all into her experiences.
That's
it was not material items. It was all.
Their obviously relationship blossomed, and unfortunately it was cut short after. Was it 3 months that they were together? Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Yeah, basically from the until her birthday, or shortly thereafter.
Okay. Well, we're not going to talk about, unless you and Victoria are comfortable with it, but we all know what happened that night. I mean, if you guys want to talk about it, fine. I don't want to put any pressure on either of you, because that was a pretty devastating evening and what transpired after that. But Victoria has been extremely vocal in wanting justice for not just the kids, but obviously for Devin as well. And you have been right there in the thick of it with Victoria, fighting this good fight. And I do believe it's a good fight. I think Chris would agree with me on that this is a good fight.
What I'm calling for really is
Mm-hmm.
an investigation. After the guilty verdict came in, we were all shocked. I was shocked. And one of the things that I'd requested is I wanted access to state's discovery. I'm not an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm looking for, but I need to see it.
Well, Victoria,
yes,
right. But but just back up a little bit, because I believe, if I'm not incorrect here, Jimmy, you were vocal prior to the verdict coming down. And it's to my understanding that the state's attorney's office wasn't too kind towards you and your family. Is that correct?
Yeah, certainly. The verdict has zero impact on my family's feelings towards Devin and his family. I truthfully couldn't give two shits what the verdict has to say or what they feel. This has always been for us. I'm a parent. I'm a parent of two beautiful and amazing children. And as a parent, I took the responsibility of raising them to good people. And I'm not going to change the way that I've raised them and what I've raised them to believe and how I've raised them to be, because the circumstances don't fit me. I lost my daughter. I can't change that. God only knows, if there was anything in the world I could do, I would do it. But it doesn't benefit my family. It doesn't change our situation. It doesn't do anything to lessen the pain by hurting another family. And there's simply a right and a wrong here, and that's all it boils down to. There's a misnomer out there that, I'm doing this because I had this a long, amazing relationship with Devin. Well, the facts are, Allie and Devin knew each other for 3 months. I don't know if it would have made it 4 months, 8 months, 12 years, or another day, but it's irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
I knew Devin. I met Devin one time prior to the death of my daughter. Irrelevant. It's right and wrong. And there is, in my estimation, there is one singular person responsible for this. Yes, there can be a million contributing factors, and I get all that. And could speed contribute to it? Of course it can. But does speed define this accident? No. What defines this accident is a wrong way drunk driver. Period. And if we're going to start blaming Devin for speeding, then that means, folks, watch out, because if you're speeding, doing everything else right, but you're speeding and you get hit by a drunk driver, guess what? It's your fault.
That's where that setting the precedence comes in with this
That's
case.
Scary. That is really, really scary.
Very scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've all heard the saying, something of throwing rocks in glass houses. I'm guilty of speeding. I can honestly admit that. And but it's just, there's just right and wrong. That's it. There's just right and wrong. And it wouldn't matter if honestly, even if I didn't like Devin, which I do, and if I didn't have a fondness, which I do, and if I didn't have a relationship, which I do, if none of those things were the case, and if my daughter had broken up with him and I still had no relationship and she told me he was an asshole, I still wouldn't want this for him, because even if he was an asshole, that's not a reason for him to go to prison for the rest of his life. So we've got to set aside all the other elements and just look at the facts. And the facts of the matter are, Devin's not the cause of this horrific accident.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jimmy, did you express this to the state's attorney's office or the prosecutor, whoever was in charge of this?
I can assure you I'm much better expressing my opinion than I am keeping it to myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
You strike me as that kind of guy.
And they did not receive receive what you had to say very well.
Well, I don't know that they didn't receive it well. I would say initially the way that they received it was to keep everything from us and not make us aware. I learned of their pursuit of Devin. I don't remember what time it was. My wife is usually my fact checker, but it was maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. My phone rang and I answered it, and it was the state's attorney's office, the victim's advocate, letting me know that they were sending someone out to arrest Thomas Petry as well as Devin Perkins. And at that moment, I was like, what do you mean Devin Perkins? And this was the first time I had heard of it. And it was 30 minutes, before they were going to arrive at his home. So I found out 30 minutes before the Perkins family found out. And of course, I'm not calling and waking everybody up at 4:30 in the morning to tell them the police are on their way, because I don't want any knee-jerk reaction. The last thing we need to do is give them a reason to arrest him, because I have felt and continue to feel that this is wrong, and that ultimately, no matter how difficult it may be, Victoria and her efforts and our support, we will prevail and Devin will come home. And so we let that play out. And sure enough, obviously they did arrest him. And but yeah, that was how we found out. So initially, they really didn't seek anything from us. And once they did arrest him, we were very vocal. And that's when that's where that relationship really went astray, because in one breath you're talking to the state's attorney and you want him to arrest Thomas Petry, the drunk driver, and in the next breath you're telling him to leave Devin Perkins alone. And so it's hard to have somebody as your advocate and your adversary in one relationship, one person with both relationships. Wow. And so it just hasn't worked. And it's the Mosers have felt the same way that we feel, and the Fellermans have felt differently. And so
I actually received, the Fellerman law firm, Edward Saramboli, was the one who notified me of Devin's arrest that morning.
Yeah. So, I mean, I
was going to ask you. Well, Victoria, I was going to ask you, obviously, because Devin was the one that was getting arrested. I mean, up until April, you guys were not fearful that this was a possibility. Is that correct?
Not at all. Not at all. Absolutely. One thing I knew for certain, with Devin being in ICU, I realized, of course, if he had been impaired at the time, they would have arrested him there. That's the first thing that they would do, is to do a blood draw and a tox screen, especially when you've got 3 fatalities and you've got a young kid at the wheel, actually, and 2 others, injured. He was not suspect at all. This came out of left field for us completely.
So much so that his vehicle was not put in the proper place for
secure.
When a secure location for somebody that is a suspect. His car was taken to the common area from just anybody in an accident outside waiting on insurance to do their thing. So
right.
Their initial scope here was not focused on Devin. So that came later at some point in time. Still part of Victoria's private investigating, but that still remains to know exactly when that changed.
Yeah, Michael.
Well, my hinky meter, my hinky meter went up. I'm not going to say who I think may have pushed that narrative in regards to having Devin charged, because God knows I don't want to stir the pot right now. But the little hairs on the back of my neck are up, and I have my own suspicions but I'm not going to voice it. But go ahead, Victoria. What were you going to say?
Those suspicions were, they don't have to be suspicions. We were on calls where Greg Fellerman said the wheels of justice need to proceed and Devin needs to be charged. So there is no suspicion. We know factually, because he said it out of his mouth and into our ears. That was the first time we had ever heard it. Prior to then, we had, I guess without verifying the facts, we all thought we were united that the person responsible for this was Thomas Petry. So none of us, until Greg spoke up, none of us believed that there was anyone on this side of the table that felt like Devin should be charged criminally in any of this. So
And if I could add to that, one thing that many people are not aware of at that time, even at that call, clear up through trial, the Fellerman law firm was Devin's civil representation throughout this matter. So to say we were completely blindsided by that first, right, on that Zoom meeting, I think my jaw dropped to the ground and my heart sunk because from January of 2023, now, and the reason why we selected them is they were here directly following the crash. I think it was within 2 days, tending to, of course, Ava's needs. And to put it mildly, the term that I heard is the Florida Highway Patrol, the investigation, it was a shit show. I forget the first, and Jimmy, maybe the Florida Highway Patrol officer who started to investigate, and then she took 2 days off. And here we have
that's when it turned for me. That's when it got really difficult for me, is when
it very, very, I mean, we have obviously three of our children are lost. We've got one child in ICU, another one injured, a driver who caused the accident who remains at large, and the first investigating Florida Highway Patrol officer takes 2 days off. That's when we started screaming. The Fellerman law firm, Edward Cerimboli, was here. They were investigating, in contact with myself, with my ex-husband, Michael Perkins, providing information to Florida Highway Patrol. And again, I was just shocked to hear it on the Zoom because it wasn't even indicated. There was no recusal. There was no discussion. Devin might be suspect. Going back to, I know just from experience and knowledge that if he had been impaired, if you look at the charging affidavit, they cite being under the influence of alcohol and THC as factors for his arrest. His toxicology reports are different, and he would have been arrested in January. But like Jimmy said, it was 4 months and then a blindside.
Yeah, and I mean, and going back to what you initially said in terms of Joe flying to Florida, the Fellerman attorneys and the family, whatever, they were in an airplane flying to Florida to investigate this prior to my family even being aware that the accident had happened.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Now, I didn't find out that this accident was 2:33 a.m. Is that right, Victoria?
It's 2:13.
2:13, pardon me.
2:13.
2:13 a.m. So it's Sunday morning. It's 2:13 a.m. I find out Sunday night around 9-something p.m.
Wow.
And Florida.
And you know how I found out?
Wow.
I found out because my daughter's friends were reaching out to us. Our calls began at 5 p.m. So I went through an entire day not knowing my daughter was deceased. And at 5 p.m., we have a Sunday routine, Sunday dinner with a group of three main families, our family and two others that have gotten together for 15 years now. And the kids grew up doing this. We were at Sunday dinner, and Tamara, my wife, starts getting some texts from Allie's girlfriends all around the country and saying, hey, we're worried about Allie. We're worried about Allie. Dinner's at 6:30. We get home. My son and his girlfriend at the time were with us. We get back to our house. The texts start intensifying. I picked up the phone and called Florida Highway Patrol and gave them my daughter's name. And I got hold on. And
Wait,
well,
I don't mean to interrupt you, Jimmy, but how did you have the wherewithal to call Florida Highway Patrol? What made you call them?
the concerning texts from our daughter's girlfriends. And so I called them,
Okay.
and within, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes of my call to them, where they confirmed nothing, but they confirmed everything by within about 45 minutes, a handsome young state trooper that was, wet around the ears, poor guy, must have been close by us. They sent him to our house. I came around the corner. Our doors were glass front doors. I came around the corner, and there's a state trooper, and he immediately takes his hat off and puts it over his chest. And I opened the door, and I just said to him, if my daughter's gone, I need to know before we walk in there to tell my wife. And he said, I'm sorry, sir, she is. And so I walked around the corner to tell Tamara and JD, her brother. And so this is 9 something at night, and it happened at 2:13 a.m. So we're talking 20 hours.
The Florida Highway Patrol was aware because I discovered Devin as a John Doe up in Halifax and Daytona Beach. And they were there at 2:30 in the afternoon asking Devin who was in the automobile. So they were aware far before. And
how in the world we go?
All right. Well,
how my family goes 20 hours without being aware?
How did Allie's friends know before
they saw? They were they track each other, so they have the locations.
Okay.
So they follow each other, and they were aware that they had gone to Orlando, and they were aware that they were on their way home from Orlando, and they knew where Devin lived, and that's where they were staying that night.
And it was also because State Road 40, it was a big deal. It was the news had heard, and the kids all knew of a horrific crash. State Road 44 in New Smyrna Beach is a 4-lane divided highway. It's a desolate area. And same thing, Devin was in a group with his friends where they all communicate and track. And then all of a sudden after 2 a.m., the communication had just stopped.
Gotcha.
And they talked about there being a young lady from Indiana that had passed away. And I think that was kind of the icing that secured it for our girlfriend or Alex's girlfriends to notify us. I mean, obviously you can imagine they don't want to tell us the wrong thing and scare the heck out of us. But in the flip side, they were brave enough to pick up the phone and start calling and texting. I mean, so anyway, they were, and they were the first people to tell us who did it. I mean, those kids were texting me within hours telling me who did it. And it took the police, I don't know, 4 months, 5 months, whatever it was to even tell us who did it. They didn't acknowledge anything. And I understand.
Can I throw something in there, Jimmy?
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah, because access to State's Discovery. There are pictures of Tom Petry in State's Discovery where I would imagine that it's after the accident because there's pictures of him. It's on the Save Devin website, so I've got it up there. And I like to say anything that comes out of these mouths. Please fact check me. I don't speak out of line, but I've been.
I have.
There are pictures of where he was at Florida Highway Patrol. He has 4 pictures taken with a shirt off. You can clearly see raccoon eyes, but yet in State's Discovery, and I'm not a legal professional, I'm not a law enforcement agent, but I do realize that there is a particular chain of custody. There needs to be some sort of documentation for every aspect. And at the end of the day, we've got, my son has 4 felony charges, and I want to make sure that every T has been crossed and every I dotted. And there it is. So at some point before the arrest, I'm going to say probably close to after the accident, Otherwise, I can't imagine any other reason why he would be at Florida Highway Patrol with blackened eyes. But no record, no indication. Who interviewed him? Why is he here?
Right.
I mean, my daughter had a wallet and a handbag and everything else. So it's remarkable to me that they can't figure out who she is. I mean, my daughter, although passed, the damages to my daughter were internal. So externally, her face looked like the picture in her driver's license. There's no confusion physically to look at her. Her death is a result of internal injuries, not external. So it's real simple to take that driver's license and say, this is her, Indiana Dulin. Let's look up this family. Not real common. I mean, her address on her driver's license was our home address. So again, not difficult.
There was no
different than her her cell phone was given to every family except for us.
Yep.
After the accident, and people picking up personal items, they tried to release our daughter's phone to every single family, but they refused to give it to us. It took my wife and I don't know, 6 to 8 months to get her phone back because they were trying to use it to incriminate Devin as additional evidence. They were unsuccessful with that, but they would not release it to us, but yet they were willing to release it to everybody else.
I went to go pick up Devin's phone and I was handed a purple iPhone. The one time that I left Devin's side at Florida Highway Patrol, that's where I met Teresa Mosier, Kyle's mother. And I'm driving back to the hospital and I look down and I call. I said, what color is your phone? And he said, gold. So I went back to Florida Highway Patrol, knocked at the door, an officer came out. I said, this isn't my son's phone. You've given me somebody else's. He says, hang tight. Closed the door, came back. And I hate to even say this, but almost like a snicker. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We checked one of the girls' Instagrams. It belongs to one of the girls.
Wow.
This is it. I mean,
it just gets worse and worse.
Chris,
it
It
is
worse and worse.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, what is
make
the
this up.
deal?
Yeah.
We could not begin to describe all the outlandish events that have occurred since that night of the accident. There's no way I could recall every single one of them.
Yeah.
But I can certainly attest to the fact that it has been one giant shit show.
Sounds like it.
Well, okay, so he gets charged. He's in jail. He gets bond. He's working while he's out on bond. It's my understanding that he got permission to come and visit you and your family, Jimmy.
The young man that visited us after. We had a celebration of life in Indianapolis, and Devin somehow managed. He was not able to fly because he had a collapsed lung, but at that point he was able to ride in a car. So one of Allie's girlfriends brought him up to Indianapolis. And this is the first meeting for my wife and my son and the rest of our family and friends to meet Devin. I was the only person at that point who had met him. My son's girlfriend. So the two of us had met him. And so the young man that showed up, I don't say this in a derogatory fashion, but the young man that showed up was broken. He was physically, emotionally, spiritually. Victoria will tell you that the very best thing that he ever did was to come visit us and let us embrace him, let us hold him, let us love him, and let him see with his own eyes that we weren't judging him, we weren't blaming him, that we were supporting him, and that we wanted him to recover and we wanted him to get his life back to his normal post-accident as he possibly could. So the best thing that happened was he came, and I can just our family talked about it so much. The person who walked in, well, didn't walk in, the person who hobbled in the front door the day that he got there, and the person who left the day that he went home, he was there was a transformation in the 48, 72, whatever hours he was with us. Victoria and I spoke on the phone. She told me she saw, color in his skin.
Smile.
Yeah, smile, and she saw life in him again. And so our, not to say this is manufactured, because it's not, it is genuine. We do absolutely 100% care for Devin, but we knew that Devin still needed more love, and he needed more support, and he needed to know that our family sincerely felt the way that we told him. And he also needed to be able to step away from that. If he can laugh with us, if we laugh, if he sees us laugh, he knows that he has permission to laugh. He knows he has permission to smile. Because if Allie's parents can do it, Allie's brother can do it, then that means it's okay for me to do it. And I think he really needed to see that it was okay for him to have a life and to smile and to be thankful to be alive and not be remorseful or regretful that he didn't die on that day. And that, I know on many occasions he wished that he had passed and that he didn't have to live through the aftermath of this. But anyway, we invited him back, and he was beyond elated and happy. He said, nothing's going to be as good as Daytona, but I'll go to the Indy 500 if you make me. And so that was an amazing turn of events, because he had to go into court and ask for permission, which I understand. But the craziness was, we were on the Zoom in the courtroom, and they actually made us turn on our cameras. We were just watching, and they made my wife, who was at the hair salon, she had her phone, she was just listening, but they made her turn her phone on while she's sitting in the chair with her hair in whatever condition it was. And they made us raise our right hand and take the oath that in the event we spoke to Devin about the case, that they would come and arrest us and hold us in contempt of court.
Oh, jeez.
Wow. Oh my God. Chris, what say you?
I don't want to cut Jimmy off. Please continue. The more I hear about this, yeah. Go ahead.
It
Jimmy.
was real simple. As we said earlier in the show, Chris, I'm not a man who keeps it to myself. I have to tell you that I knew it was going to do me no good to say what I wanted to say to them, the state's attorney, when they told me that, because ultimately the only person I was going to hurt was Devin, because he was not going to get permission to come. So my wife and I raised our hand and said, yeah, we swear we're not going to talk to him. Listen, the last thing we wanted to do when we saw Devin was talk about this case. What we wanted to do was talk about life, and we wanted to tell him that we loved him, and we wanted to tell him that we support him, and we wanted him to heal, and we wanted him to know that, as weird as this sounds, we wanted him to know he had our permission to try and move forward and to try and let go of some of this stuff, and that we were not blaming him. So that's all we wanted. We just wanted to help this young man heal. We didn't want to talk about the case. Hell, we never want to talk about the case. But the reality is that this case haunts us and will haunt us for the rest of our lives. And we'll probably talk about it at some point every year for the rest. I'm 54, for the next 35 years or so.
Right. Well, the restraint that you have exhibited, the compassion that you're
the trial
showing.
happened.
Go ahead, Jules.
No,
Okay.
I want to hear what you have to say.
I was just going to, well, to Jimmy, first of all, the compassion that you're showing for this, for Devin is just unbelievable, inspiring. I hope the people that are in the chat are acknowledging what it is that you're saying, because a lot of people in your position would be doing the exact opposite. And they would be, I don't know if blaming is the right word, but they would definitely be saying, well, what were you doing going 85, 90 miles an hour? What's wrong with you? Instead of taking that position of, you didn't do anything wrong, dude. This was not your fault. You know, it's unfortunate that what happened, but I'm not going to put that on your shoulders. So I, commend you for that. And that's an inspiration, for
I
me.
told Devin he deserves a ticket. And whatever penalty comes along with speeding, and if that means take away his driver's license and he has to ride a freaking bicycle, I told him I didn't give a shit. He's guilty of.
He hasn't had a driver's license since the arrest.
Right, but you know what I'm saying. I mean,
I agree.
I've not hidden it from Devin that he is responsible for speeding. He made that decision, and he has to own it. And I've not seen anything but his willingness to own that. But to take it and take a speeding violation and somehow turn it into he's responsible for the drunk driver that hit him, that's a reach. That's a big reach.
A big overreach.
Yeah.
It defies logic. It just defies logic. I can't wrap my head around this. I just cannot wrap my head around this. So, okay. So what, what can we do? I mean, we are a small channel. We're doing all we can do. We're getting the word out as best we can. We have 59, 60 people watching. Hopefully those 60 people will go out and they'll tell 60 people and it will grow and grow. But what can we do? We can write. I know, Victoria, you have on your website people that we can write to and ask for things, demand for things. But like, what are you guys doing to get the story out? And what can we do to further get the story out?
The biggest thing is what we're doing now to request the transparency. All of the emails that are coming in through the website, you just simply go to savedevin.com. There's a contact form, and that is submitted to our Governor Ron DeSantis, our Attorney General Ashley Moody, the State Attorney R.J. Lavezza, the prosecutors, the Florida Highway Patrol Supervisor, and officers. We're over at 5,000 direct requests, either between the change petition or direct emails, and simply is asking for an investigation of this case. As I mentioned, my whole start of the Save Devin, and actually Jimmy came up with the #Save Devin or hashtag Save Devin.
All right.
That's all him over there.
Awesome.
Was just to look at it, because when you look at the charging affidavit and you see just blatant discrepancies in it, there's no defying the logic. They coupled stating that he was impaired. But again, we have the toxicology reports that absolutely don't lie. You cannot debate the facts. They did overreach on this because the evidence doesn't support it. Now, I'm not in a position that I can make a change, but I'm hoping the influx of people who are looking now at the facts of the case, or the discovery, or the Florida Highway Patrol, the 700-page document that is up online, somebody who is aware, knows what to look for, can pull apart. Where Devin's at legally now is we did have the trial in September. And there was a guilty verdict that was rendered in less than 20 minutes that we are aware of. I know.
Yeah.
I seen you shake your head.
That 20 minutes is also inclusive of reviewing and reading whatever they needed to of the 24-page sentencing documents. So in 20 minutes, they were able to decide all the rules that they needed to figure out what was included, what wasn't included, how they went about this process. They had 24 pages of rules and a decision in 20 minutes. And we don't know that was truly 20 minutes. All we know is we were out of the room for 20 minutes. They could have been done in 30 seconds, and the judge could have been tied up in chambers doing something for 19 and a half minutes. We only know it was 20 minutes from when we left to when we returned.
Right.
And that was one of my biggest things that when I had spoken to Victoria after I had done my research, and I was able to have a phone conversation with her prior to her coming on, and it's like, that's not enough of time to read the charging documents, let alone to deliberate. So they did not deliberate.
No.
They're
We've watched enough trials.
Convince me of that.
Yeah, we've watched enough trials where it takes sometimes
Yeah.
it takes an hour just to get through the charging documents. Who's going to be the foreperson? What's the straw vote? I mean, that takes time. You can't just.
I was the foreman.
Yeah.
I was the foreman on a trial, and in that trial, we were in deliberation for 7-8 hours, and we were only talking about people that robbed a house.
Yeah,
we're not talking about murder or drunk driving. We're not talking about death, and it took us 8 hours to go through and make sure we thoroughly went through the process and did things legally, taking the responsibility that comes along with being a juror very seriously. And somehow in 20 minutes they went through 24 documents. And
can I bring up something in the chat? Leslie Lauren just brought up something, and you guys tell me what you think about this. Leslie says the judge looked Victoria in the face last Friday and said in front of the courtroom that people need to back off postings on social media about this. Can you talk about that?
Fact.
First of all,
that is a fact. Well, let me just say this. I was there indirectly. I attended the hearing via Zoom. And that is a fact that the judge did say that, but she didn't. Yes, was it directed towards Victoria? I absolutely 100% believe it was, but she never said, Mrs. Maxwell or Victoria Maxwell. She never specifically did that. However,
that'd be straight up
the innuendo was there.
Sorry, that'd be straight up intimidation if she called you out. I mean, she's not going to do that. But
the reality of this situation is, if it wasn't for Victoria's efforts and everything that she has done, which, look, it's her son, right? She's fighting for her child's life. There's no limitation to what a parent will do for their own child. So if it wasn't for Victoria's efforts, Devin would be sentenced and sitting in prison right now for X number of years, whatever that may be. So for anyone, whether it was directed at Victoria or at anyone else in that room, for anyone to ask a parent to stop is absolutely asimine.
Agreed.
And what I'm asking for again is just an unbiased investigation. Stepping back into the jury deliberation in less than 20 minutes. Now, the next hearing that we had as a legal team is when I fired the previous defense team and brought in Bill Pennell, and they handled a hearing for us, which coincidentally was to cover juror misconduct. There were some allegations of juror misconduct. We had asked for the ability to interview the jury foreman to ask whether or not he was aware. And the jury pool was so large in Devin's case that that's the only time that I wasn't in the courtroom with him, because it was such a high profile case. And the jury foreman, we wanted to ask if he was aware of any of the victims or the defendants in the case. And that's when we brought in Bill Pennell and his team to represent Devin from that point. That's where the discovery of the ineffective assistance of counsel, that's what our motion was Friday.
Okay.
Devin has not been sentenced as of yet. The new legal team that we have in place presented examples of what they call ineffective assistance of counsel. Unfortunately, a senior member of Devin's team, upon cross-examination, opened the door, asked a question that opened the door to bring in the THC metabolites, the toxicologist, and the toxicology reports throughout Devin's trial. And from that point, it was a trifecta for our prosecutors, because every time you heard the word speed, you heard alcohol, you heard THC.
13 times, right?
Well, that's just on the closing arguments, Jimmy. That's just one hour.
That's what was what was testified.
We had 5 days of trial.
Well, Victoria, let me ask you this: what was your thoughts on Friday when you heard the defense counsel on the stand stating that, how can I put this? All right, there was talk about the photos of the interior of the car.
Mhm.
And we know that the judge excluded any testimony during trial on the whole THC stuff.
Correct.
So I don't remember which attorney it was, but he was asked, well, would you have ever asked that question? And the answer was, well, no, because we didn't know if the state was going to enter those photos into evidence, which to me sounded, I could see why that there was a concern there. But the attorney that actually on cross-examination who asked the question, did he not have those same concerns about those photos?
I don't know what he was thinking in asking that question. And I've reviewed the audios, the videos, I mean, over and over again. And the perception is by him saying what he said gave a misleading impression for the jurors, and that's why the state prosecutors, and rightfully so, they presented it that by him opening that door, we can now utilize it. And the ruling was correct. The court made a ruling before trial that is to be ruled out. When the mistake was made from Robert Leventhal with our previous defense team, he opened the door. It was covered in extensively on Friday that the prosecutors cannot open the door. We made the mistake. The previous defense team made the mistake, and it's a detrimental mistake. It was done on day one.
Well, Victoria, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
I've been dying to ask you this. Given that all three attorneys last Friday took the stand and testified, what is the relationship between you and those attorneys? Like, are they pissed, or are they, we effed up, so we have to own up? I mean, what's the happening here?
There is no current relationship with them because they have all been fired when we brought in the new team. One of the three attorneys made the error. Clearly, it was Robert Leventhal who had opened the door. When they were in on court Friday, they were all testified separately. David Jancha, he was asked, would he have asked the question? He clearly said no. We knew to stay away from it. James DeSinger, same thing. They would never have asked that question. Yeah. There's no relationship.
And they said because they had the concern. Or they testified from what, I mean, I heard them say they wouldn't have done it for the mere fact that they knew that these photos of the interior of the car existed, and they did not know if these pictures were going to be presented in as evidence, and they were going to steer clear of it. So yes, I did hear them testify to that.
It was an error. It was a huge error.
At the end of the day, though, this is not an attempt to build any relationships. This is the only thing that we are concerned with, that we are united in, is the release of Devin. And that is the only thing that matters. Whatever means that we can go, that we can take, whatever process, whatever light we can shed, whatever information we can bring to the forefront is what we will do in order to get Devin out. And that's the bottom line. That's all that, in all of this, that's the only thing that we can change the outcome to, is to Devin's outcome. We can't change any of the outcomes from the other three children, but we can change the outcome for Devin, and that is the only thing we are focused on.
I understand that. And from what I heard during trial, I thought in the beginning of the hearing, I thought that the judge seemed to be listening with an open mind, but it got to a point where when one of the attorneys had said, well, the prosecutor said they're not asking for they're not going to ask for any jail time, and everything went south from that point on. And then the next thing I know, the judge is, I want to see all of you in my chambers now. And they were gone for a considerable amount of time. But when she came back, her whole attitude, in my opinion, I wasn't in the courtroom. I was only watching, like I said, via Zoom. You two were in the courtroom. I felt her vibe took a total reversal from the beginning part of the hearing. What do you guys think?
There was, it was a surprise, and I can't speculate. I don't know what happened, what conversations took place behind chambers. That's between the prosecutors and our new defense.
But did you feel that her attitude, when they came out of chambers, her attitude was totally different?
I think the case is very trying. It's a lot. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall.
Jimmy, what about you? Yeah, I know, Victoria. Jimmy, what were your thoughts on that?
I am in sales, so I read people for a living, and this judge is very stoic. She is, she certainly doesn't, she's very professional in how she goes about things, and she seems to be very procedural. Whether it favors you or it doesn't favor you, she seems to be very, very procedural. She continues to compliment counsel, both sides, regardless of which counsel we have on Devin's side. And every single hearing and every day of trial, I think we have all been told how wonderful these and efficient and time sensitive and what a great job they have all done. So I have to admit, this is the first time I've been through something of this. But I don't know. There are times when it certainly feels like, man, everything seems to go Thomas Petry's way and nothing goes Devin's way. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that is if that's a result of ineffective counsel. I don't know if that is a bias from anyone involved. I don't know. But I would say that judge, in my estimation, and in the 15 minutes of experience that I have with all of this, I feel like she follows every rule. It seems to be very detailed with respect to that. I don't know what she wants. I know that she has pushed, and re-pushed for these attorneys to get together and come out with a solution. I know she desperately wanted.
She did talk about a downward departure. She did bring up a downward departure, but she also said that
we're not there yet.
We're not even there yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Our current stance is Devin did not receive a fair trial due to ineffective assistance of counsel.
Yeah.
Had there been a different,
we want a retrial.
So what our next, she'll make the ruling to determine whether all the case law, the facts, if it applies. We are hopeful for a new trial for Devin, because I don't think it was fair. I know in sitting in that courtroom every day, and Jimmy, you can chime in, once that door was open, it was a trifecta. It is abundantly clear to me there was 3 different attorneys, 3 firms, and I'm going to tell you quite honestly, they did not explore discovery. Right down to just Friday, it was mentioned, prosecutors specifically said Devin Perkins was lying when he was interviewed by Florida Highway Patrol Officer, I think it was Barack, said, because Devin said he was not speeding.
Mhm.
And the reason that Devin said he was not speeding, I was in ICU with him. I was there when Florida Highway Patrol was the afternoon of the 11th, where he asked Devin who was in his car. And I had, because that crash report is dated at 2:33 a.m. I asked him, that was my biggest concern. Was he speeding? You know, was it his fault? I knew it was a wrong way driver. I knew the person fled, but and I saw it. I had a copy. Devin responded to the questions of the information that he had at that time.
Not
You
to
know,
mention
and
the fact that he's laying in a hospital bed. He's on medications and everything
awaiting
else.
awaiting the replacement of the hip.
We've seen that in other trials where you know, defendants, if you will, or you know, they'll be interviewed in that exact situation, you know, and sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times it's like, why is that even legal? Why is that even allowed and possible and legal?
Well, the original
I
crash
got so-
report said both cars were going 65 miles an hour. So if Devin's got a report in that his mother has in her hands that says he's going 65, and they've discussed this, and then he's interviewed, why would he say I'm speeding if he's looking at a report that says he was going 65? Why would he say, oh no, that's got to be wrong, I was doing X?
Right.
So
Right.
I'm just going to bring you
serious
bring
trauma
you around.
Right.
Around that our legal team, the first time around, when Devin was on the stand to testify, that information is in discovery. They didn't bring it up. You know, that's another example. They didn't. Even the latest revised crash report that is after the incident will clearly outline the toxicology. Tom Petry identified as the wrong way driver. Contributing factors, wrong way driver. Contributing factors for Devin Perkins, none.
Right.
There's a lot of inaccuracies.
It
That
also
is why.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's why that is in place to make sure that it's fair and right.
It also talks about 100 miles an hour when in fact at the time of the accident he was 84 miles an hour.
True.
Yeah.
I mean,
And the
but
911 calls.
yet it always talks about 100 miles an hour. Well, hey, you know what? Yesterday I went 100 miles an hour too. But if I get in an accident today and I'm going 65, we need to talk about the speed I was going at the time of the accident. And at the time of the accident, when impact happened, that car was going 84 miles an hour, according to the police. So why are we talking about 99? Because if we're talking about 99, isn't that to write him a speeding ticket? Isn't 84 the speed he was going at time of impact? So shouldn't that be the speed we're discussing unless we're writing him a ticket for 99 miles an hour?
Yep, I would think so.
I would too. I mean, there's just, again, I'm no expert. I'm just a layman father who lost a child who just simply wants this to be done correctly, fairly, and I as at the current moment don't feel that that's what we have. And not only that, but Devin's defense was no defense. I mean, the first trial they didn't have their own. I mean, how do you have a car accident and have the state have their reconstruction person say this is what the accident looked like, and how does the defense not have their own reconstruction to make sure that it's done correctly? How do they not? There was no. The only witnesses were Devin and the one lady, the nurse.
And I just want to point out, they weren't court-appointed attorneys. They were paid.
They were paid for.
They were paid.
So how in the world does if he had an effective defense, how does the only witnesses you have is the Devin, the person who's on trial, and a nurse that treated him when he arrived at the hospital, right? Isn't that
Actually
correct?
no? It was a passenger, a car that came up on scene after the fact.
Okay. So two people, another car that came on scene, and Devin are the only two witnesses to speak on Devin's behalf. How in the world is that a defense?
That's not, and that's not going to win you many cases if you go that
No.
route.
How do you win? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't care how good anybody is. How do those two people put up a defense against crash reconstruction and all the other elements and all the 18 officers that paraded in front of us to tell us the same thing over and over and over again.
Yep.
It just makes no sense.
And one thing that, and I'm not sure if anybody's really aware of it, but the way this case was to be tried initially, it was the state, the state was prosecuting both Devin and Thomas Petry as co-defendants.
Mm-hmm.
And the team that we had for Devin was preparing, because we would have both parties in the courtroom. We had depositions for the intake nurse. We would have somebody to point to as the causation. Mm-hmm. And I firmly believe when Tom Petry put in his plea of guilt short time before the accident, our team should have stopped, should have said, let us evaluate this. Are we really prepared to try this case alone? You know, it really flipped the script. Again, my first experience, I didn't know what to expect.
Of course, yeah. How could you? You know, how could anybody know what to expect and to, you know, what you guys were going to go through? There's just no way that you can prepare for that.
Yeah, we figured they were prepared.
You know?
They told us either way, we're prepared whether Tom Petry is in with us or he is aside. Right. And obviously they weren't. They were not prepared. And perhaps some of it may be that everybody that I ever speak to, everyone that hears about the case, or I know the Save Devin, I know the case. How are they charging that young man?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. I absolutely 100% agree.
It blew me away. I know. I sent it to Chris, and Chris, you were blown away too.
Yeah, everybody I've shown it to and talked to, you know, who has no idea what's going on, and I just kind of give them the overview. They're like, he should have just been, meaning Devin, should have just been charged speeding. Maybe should have been charged with speeding. And
they set a precedent, and they have criminalized a victim of a crash.
Yep.
And my son was near death, and to this date, there are no charges for the injury that my son has sustained from Thomas Petry. There's no charges.
Where does that stand? Where is that standing right now? Wasn't there supposed to be a hearing Friday afternoon
for Thomas Petry?
Yeah.
Yes. Tom was heard in the afternoon. He put a motion in to withdraw his plea of guilt. He has a new attorney. There is no ruling yet. A ruling has not been announced.
He's trying to vacate his plea of guilty.
Is it the same judge?
Yes.
Okay.
So if he vacates it, does that mean he's going to trial? Would that be the next step? He wants to have a trial?
Yeah, he would like to vacate his sentence and have an opportunity to go to trial.
Okay.
Which I just have to. I mean, again, I know there's legal ease to all of this.
It's not going to happen.
But no, I agree, it won't happen. But how is it that? How do you tell everybody I did it, and then vacate that I did it?
Yeah.
How do I unhear that you did it?
Yeah.
Nobody gets up
on
and says I did it unless they did it.
Right. Yeah, it's not going to happen. And even if it did go to trial, the jury's never going to hear that he had pled out already. You know, that's just too prejudicial. That's not going to happen. But
treated very differently. Was remained out on bond until sentencing. Remained free on bond.
Which
My
is
son has
insane.
been in jail longer than Tom Petry at this point.
Jeez. And I don't, you know, I want to go down the rabbit hole, but I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. Like, what does
it's
Petry,
hard not to.
What does he have? Like, what's the deal with this guy? Who's he connected to? What is the story with this guy? Why is Devin being treated one way and Petry's being treated completely different? You know,
I don't think
we don't know.
Yeah,
that's what's so aggravating. I think that's what's so aggravating.
I have the same concern. Yeah, I have the same concerns as Chris. I mean, this guy literally murdered 3 people and seriously injured 2 others. And yet he is being treated. Devin is being treated the same way that they charged Petry. And I still can't wrap my head around this. I can't.
Yeah.
I don't think he has any connections, or I haven't succumbed myself to believe in any kind of
Oh,
conspiracy.
it's hard though. It's hard to not go there because
I
I'm
will-
not.
hear
I'm
that.
not.
I hear that a lot.
You know?
I do get asked that question a lot. I don't know.
I will say this. The judge did look very favorably on the fact that he pled guilty. I mean, the truth is, whether he likes his sentence or not, the reality is he got the lowest possible sentence. When you consider that he killed 3 people
Mhm.
and there are 2 additional people injured, if we take 3 deaths and if you just I like Joanna Dillon, to me, is not a victim. She is, well, I'll keep my words to myself on that. But if you just look at it from 3 children that were killed and Devin Perkins that was injured, that's 4 people. If you take the 37.5-year sentence and you give him, he's going to get a 15% reduction. So he has to serve 85%. He's down to 32 years. If you take 32 years and you divide it by the 4 people, he got 8 years for each life lost and the damage he did to Devin.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not a minimum sentence, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
he got the lowest possible. So the judge was as lenient as she could be without a downward departure in his sentencing. So I don't know. This guy got on the stand and told us that he thought he was going to get somewhere from 2 to 7 years. Unbelievable.
Did he really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
This was that trial, not trial, pardon me.
Thank you.
That hearing
Bless you.
was
Thank
one
you.
of the most difficult experiences of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Not too far beyond. I mean, it was unbelievable to hear him and his smug voice that he thought he was going to get somewhere between 2 and 7, and he was willing to go to 10.
Jesus.
Oh my God. I did not go into the Zoom hearing for that. I was like, now I'm sorry I didn't do it.
He
And
called it a lynching.
He called his sentencing a lynching.
Wow.
Now,
Oh
I
my
would be
God.
more than happy to give that man a lynching.
Mm.
I would be happy to show him what a real lynching is.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
that was not a lynching, as far as I'm concerned. For somehow the court to, and listen, the court tells me he got 37.5 years per victim. But when you serve him concurrently, it's not 37.5 per victim. It is 8 years. So they valued my daughter's life at 8 years.
Yep. Yeah. That's got to be infuriating. I can't even imagine.
I would call it the most infuriating part. There's not, I've said all along, whatever he gets, he gets. And the reality is, if he's 37.5 years, he's 55 years old. Mm-hmm. So he's going to serve 32 years. Mm-hmm. So that puts him out at 87 years old. Should he somehow survive the poor diet and life experiences that he's going to have for the next 32 years? Right. In other words, why wouldn't you give him that sentence per person and let him serve it? Because the reality is he's not getting out of there. Mm-hmm. He's not leaving. So why in the world wouldn't you do justice for the families that lost their loved ones?
Right. Why give him hope? Why give him hope and his family hope?
Give him hope. Why don't you give us hope that the system cared about our children? Why not give us hope? Why did he get hope?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. I have so many questions and I'm losing them now, but go ahead, Jules. I'll get back.
No, spit them out, Chris. Spit them out.
Well, I'm reading the chat and there's a lot of great questions. Yeah, there's a lot of great questions happening. do you guys want to take a few questions now, or where do you want to
Sure.
take this? You want to take a few questions? We have Ken is he's got some really good questions. He's an attorney as well. So Ken Rosenberg has a question. Has Petry or his counsel said anything in support of Devin? I could probably answer that question. Does Miss Maxwell or Devin plan to have the current team run the real deal appeal if it happens?
The current team, they're not criminal defense. They're handling the our motion for retrial. Mm-hmm. Again, I was vetting them for assuming that we would get to a sentencing phase and that we would have an appeal after the fact. But when talking with them, when discussing the case, they recognized the errors and said, listen, this is very unorthodox. Mm-hmm. You know, for ineffective assistance of counsel, that is sort of the last saving grace after appeals process. It hardly ever comes in at this stage in the game. So they will handle our current motion. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we are granted our motion for new trial. If not, they will handle Devin through sentencing. So to that point, if we are granted a new trial, I have to hire a new criminal defense team to represent Devin in the new trial.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And we're not even going to touch the Petry
I don't like to give that man any ounce of my energy. I really don't.
I hear you. I hear you. I don't even like to say his name.
and you know,
it is a pretty appropriate name though. Petry.
Petry. Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Petry. Yeah, good one.
Oh, Jimmy, I don't know where you get your sense of humor from, but it's good.
Mm-hmm. Do we know the answer to this, Trial Junkies United? What is the judge's record on drunk drivers and their sentences before this case? Do you guys have any idea?
I don't.
Yeah.
It's a good question, though. I've never even thought about it.
Yeah.
There's so much as much as we thought of, there's so much we've never thought of, right? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do think she's a fair judge, though. I get the sense she wants it all done correctly.
Yeah.
But I do believe she wants people to be responsible for their actions. It's going to take a bona fide, documented, legally defendable reason for Devin to get anything other than a sentence. It is not going to come free from her. It is.
Yeah.
They are going to have to find, those attorneys are going to have to find the magic, the error in the ways that gives him a legal reason for a new trial. And I do believe they found it. It's whether or not.
I do too.
It's whether or not they were able to prove it to the judge so that she could comfortably do it.
Right.
Do you agree, Victoria? We've never talked about it.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I do.
And I listened to the opening argument and, you know, the opening statement and the closing argument. And I felt that his groundwork was, and he hit on all the points. He cited statutes and case law. I mean, it seems like the new team had it going on. I mean, I didn't find. I tried to find some fault with them, and I couldn't, because everything that they said, they backed it up with case law. So that's why and with the prosecution's argument, I wasn't buying what the prosecutor was saying. You know, I know people are going to say, well, you know, Julie, you went into this with a bias. Well, maybe I did, but I went into that hearing with an open mind. I wanted to hear both sides. And it just seems like that the prosecutor was regurgitating the same thing over and over and over again. So, I mean, I don't know what this judge is going to do. I really don't. For all the cases that Chris and I have covered, not there. The percentage is small for being granted a new trial, but I never seen this type of evidence being given to a judge before that was so clear on the reasons why he should be granted a new trial.
Just a portion of the legal motion that was presented, and they covered primarily just the closing arguments. And in the motion that Pinnell's team put in, without counsel's error in opening the door to this evidence and argument, there's at least a reasonable probability that the outcome of the trial would have been different. And accordingly, the court should grant Perkins an evidentiary hearing, which we had on Friday, and on this claim, and grant him a new trial. They have excerpts, and I think from memory, he time-stamped it for the judge. And if you visit the Save Devin website, I probably have overlooked some, but I have sat and replayed and bulleted where in closing, and if you'd like, I can cover it, but our prosecutor said, and as I mentioned, it was a trifecta, sitting there listening for the 4.5 days of trial. When we heard speed, we heard THC, and we heard alcohol. Yeah. And the excerpts that I received from just listening was Mike Willard saying in his system, he had 0.028 alcohol in his system. Mm-hmm. He also had THC. Based on what was in his system, possibly reduced ability. With a 0.0828 blood alcohol level and low level of THC, lacks regard. He was driving way too fast, coupled with the substances in his system. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the fact that he had a low level of alcohol in his system. He had a 0.028 blood alcohol in his system. We heard from the toxicologist in this case, Lynette Camadoulis, and she indicated alcohol is a central nervous system depressant. It can slow down reaction time and impairs judgment. She further said he had 3 nanograms of THC in his system, in which we heard Miss Camadoulis is a hallucinogen, and this type of substance can alter perception of time and distance. She also said when you take these 2 substances together, it creates an additive effect. While she can't say that the defendant was impaired, what she can say is those drugs were interacting within his system. They were interacting in his body. When you're performing a multitask event such as driving, you should not be having alcohol and THC interacting in your system. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that was the defendant's extreme speed with the conditions of the road that night, coupled with the substances in his system, which made his driving reckless, which contributed to this crash and caused the death of 3 individuals. Ugh. That's just what I've been able to capture with listening to a portion of the closing arguments.
He contributed to the act. I mean, that's just straight up BS. He did not contribute.
Well, that's just pointing out where it was coupled, where that potentially has presented him with an unfair trial. Because if that evidence had been left out, the toxicologist would not have come in. None of this would have come in. Speed alone is not by Florida law. Speeding alone is not reckless driving. It is the contributing factors that have coupled, and that's where they reached. That's where they stretched. And I'm just gonna, not to be repetitive, but bring you back to somebody. Look at the 707 charging affidavit for Devin Perkins. There is blatant discrepancies. There's big old stars on there.
I read it.
Where it indicates
I think
under impairment, but it's far.
Chris, you read it too, didn't you?
I have, but I'm not as familiar as you guys. So continue on.
I am.
Yeah. Oh, I know. You probably, yeah. You know every
I know more
period
than I
and
need to know.
comma.
My
Yeah.
husband says I have a new career. I said, no, after this, no, sir.
Mhm.
I just want what's right and just for Devin. And
course.
and it is my feeling, and I stand by it. He did not receive a fair trial due to our incompetent defense team. And if we're going to charge him that harshly, give him a new trial.
Yep.
Let us be prepared. Ultimately, we would like a resolution because I stand by. I believe it's prosecutorial overreach. They overcharged in this case.
Yeah.
Let's charge accordingly.
Yeah.
Contributing factors, culpable negligence. If there's some, Devin will own. He's a man of character. You could say, Jimmy, he's a man of character. He stands. He'll own up to his responsibility.
I think, in another piece, I do agree that he's not running from his responsibility. I don't believe that at all. If he was running from this, I think he would have been more inclined to take one of the plea offerings.
One of the pleas.
Right.
Instead, he felt like he was willing to stand up there and fight for himself and defend himself. But the other piece of this, Chris, that I found disturbing is there are lots of other contributing factors, but no one is on trial for those contributing factors. There were 3 911 calls, but 911 bears no responsibility for sending an officer or anyone else out there. In other words, 911, despite all the marketing and advertising that says call 911, and heck, in Indiana, we have a text service. I don't know if you guys have it here, and they market that text. If you're in your closet and you're hiding from some villain, you can text. But the reality is you're better off calling someone who loves and cares about you, who's more likely to come no matter what, because 911 gets to pick and choose who they go out and serve. Because there were 3 calls.
Yep.
And nobody was ever sent out there until the accident happened. So no responsibility there. There's a bar that served these 2 individuals for 6.5 straight hours. So bloody intoxicated that they can't walk, but yet, but the bar bears no responsibility. So how many people have no responsibility, but somehow, some way we've picked this, somebody has picked this 22-year-old young man and just said, hey, let's lay everything on him.
Yep.
Because they say, they being the state's attorneys, that he is every bit as responsible for this as the drunk driver. Not 60-40, 80-20,
50-50.
50-50. They are co-defendants in the state's eyes.
Yeah, that math doesn't add up. I think somebody in chat said that too. Math isn't mathing on that one. That just does not
Equally
make
culpable.
sense.
Yep,
At
that's
all.
what was.
At all. One thing
It's not.
I want to bring up before I forget it. What about like Mothers Against Drunk Driver? What about MAD? Is there any way that you can get them involved with this? Because they have a lot more powerful, further, deeper pockets, a longer reach. Is there any way you can contact them just to see what they would say about this?
I don't know if they would be able to assist at this point. I mean, what our biggest battle right now is to hopefully successfully have our motion granted and have a retrial and have it evaluated. My biggest push is if it's looked at from our governor, and that's the direction that we're going, that's where all these emails are going. Somebody needs to overlook and see how this case has been handled. Was our evidence collected properly?
Yeah.
In Devin's discovery, there is a confidential informant. You can tell me better. Why would there be a confidential informant?
What's confidential about this case?
Right.
Yeah. What would that be? But I also have information that the Fellerman law firm provided photos and videos to Officer Brian Gensler.
Well, listen, this is anybody who's watching this and or but this needs to be shared out on all your social media platforms, please. But Victoria Maxwell is not saying this. I am saying
Thank
this.
you.
Okay, this comes from me, Jules, personally. I am speculating my little conspiracy theory here.
Mhm.
I'm going to come straight out and say it. I think the confidential informant is the Fellermans.
Mhm.
They did this investigation. They provided photos. I mean, like is
If I could just point out,
our
I
own
believe that would
state
be another
troopers, our
area
own
of.
investigators, not capable of investigating? Are they not capable of investigating their own cases?
Mhm.
Why did somebody else have to provide an outsourced person conduct an investigation, provide photos? I mean, this is a stretch by the imagination here that this was allowed to be done. My opinion, it's just my opinion.
Just another, I believe, an example of ineffective counsel. They should have, I believe that the team that we had should have explored that.
Mm-hmm. The reason I brought up MAD was just from a PR standpoint, because going to the governor is like one thing, but getting PR out there, getting people agitated. And I can't help but to think about Karen Reed, and I don't want to go off on that tangent, but she has raised so much awareness. Well, she hasn't, but the people that are backing her have, and that governor is not doing a bloody thing for her.
Okay.
So I'm not convinced that our governor is going to do anything in this case. I think it's got to be come somewhere else.
It depends, Chris, because I can tell you in Hillsborough County, there was a lot of prosecutorial misconduct going on in Hillsborough County, where these prosecutors were charging people for crimes that were misdemeanors, but they turned it into felonies, or they were overcharging. I mean, a lot of shady shit was going down in Hillsborough County, and Governor DeSantis did step in
and removed her.
Okay.
He stepped in and removed them. Yes.
Okay.
So it's not impossible. That's why when I do this on Twitter, Victoria knows I'm always tagging.
Yeah.
I tag him, and
that was a recent post from Twitter or X. Actually,
bottom line, Chris, you're right. Any additional resources are good resources. So if
anyone listening out there wants to help us to contact Matt,
yeah, I mean, if anybody's got a contact for Matt, I believe that my daughter was killed by a drunk driver. So, if anybody has any resources that wants to help us, either Victoria or myself, my cell phone's 317-281-6679. Feel free to call me if you think that you have a way to help us. I'm all ears. So your point is well taken.
Well, the court of public opinion can be very loud. Let's just put it that way.
And it has been. I mean, I believe that's the only reason why we are where we are is because of Victoria's efforts. And if Victoria wasn't leading this charge, I'm one of her. It probably goes Dino and some family members, and then me down 3 or 4 levels. But in terms of people that she can call, I know I'm one of those sounding boards. And as I tell her all the time, honey, the bottom line is nobody in the world is ever going to care about this as much as you do. So you have to just go into every single conversation knowing you care more than anyone else, and don't let anyone else's reactions dictate your actions, because you care. And you can't expect anyone else to care like you do. And that includes me. As much as I care, and as much as I want to see Devin home, it's her baby boy. And I know that my love and my care cannot compare to hers. And so, we're all doing what we can, and we'll all continue to do what we can. But my God, she is a remarkable woman and mother for. I don't think, like people say, I don't know how you're doing what you're doing, how you're able to function, Jimmy. Well, life throws you stuff, and you deal with it, and you figure out how to move forward. And we have choices, and both Victoria and I, with different circumstances but very similar circumstances, have chosen to move forward and to fight what we believe in, fight for what we believe in, and that's all. Either that or we give up. And
There's no giving up.
no, that's right. So those are your choices.
Those are
We're
your
bringing
choices.
our boy
Yeah.
home. We are.
Yep.
I feel with confidence. He is coming home.
And yes. Well, here's the thing I want everybody to understand about Victoria. I have not known Victoria long at all. Okay. I was supposed to meet her in person on Friday, but I could not go. And in any case, I don't want any misconceptions out there regarding Victoria Maxwell saying, I don't want people saying, well, this is Devin's mother, so of course, she wants him home, or, she doesn't think her son deserves to be in jail, blah, blah, blah. What Victoria Maxwell is asking everyone is she wants transparency. She has never once denied the fact that Devin was speeding. Never once.
Nope.
At all. There are other things that have gone on, and she wants everyone to see. And it's not just us she wants for us to see. She wants the officials, the people that are in charge, the people that write the laws, the people that instill the laws. The system is broken here, especially if this case isn't a textbook case of the system being broken. I don't know what is. And you correct me if I'm wrong, Victoria, but you just want a thorough, open investigation and let the chips fall where they may.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. An unbiased investigation in its entirety into the case.
Mm-hmm. I think most judges, excuse me, at least the trials that we watch, they're so concerned about the appeals process, and trials, the trials that they're
right
presiding over to go past that or go into that. So that being said, do you feel that this judge is looking at this fairly and accurately and unbalanced, or balanced, I should say? So what's your opinions on that?
With appeal, if it go and you'll have to answer me, because like I know for ineffective assistance of counsel, it sort of dings the attorney.
Absolutely.
Right? So does
Right.
that happen? Is that what
Yes.
you're referring to? Does that happen if Devin were to go to appeal and it was overturned in appeal?
Yeah. It sounds like
okay. Because
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Jules.
Well, the other grounds that they could use, God forbid she does not grant him a trial, a new trial. He gets sentenced, and then they want to file an appeal. Yes, they're going to file with the appeals court the ineffectual counsel. However, they are going to go through every single ruling that she made during the trial, and then say, well, the judge ruled this way when
that's
the judge
appeal.
should have
That's
ruled
I do
way.
believe that because again, the team
and
that
judges are very conscious about that. They don't want their cases reversed on appeal.
I understand.
Yeah.
Well,
they
I
don't
guess
want it reversed, so they're very careful on on the. Do they make bad rulings? Oh hell yeah, they have. there's been quite a few judges that have made bad rulings. So God forbid it goes that far. It's not going to be just what the lawyer did. It's going to be, calling out any of the bad ruling she made. I didn't see the trial, so I don't know what type of ruling she made. I think it was the correct ruling. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I do think we probably have an advantage because the team is an appellate team. That's what they specialize in, and
Great.
highly recommended. So I do believe that they have cited some case law in appellate courses, or cases rather. I'm sorry, it's been a long day.
Yeah, understood.
But you're right, and I do believe that they already have a laundry list that has been started.
Good.
And we'll, when we get there, we'll get there. Hopefully we won't. I pray that we won't. I think, just like she said, I think there is a resolution between the state and where Devin's at now,
You don't want it to get to the appeal process because it seems like it's almost, I don't know, maybe Ken might be able to, weigh in on this, but the average of overturning an appeal or overturning a trial in appeals process is much harder than
2 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not only the length of time, but just to get, just to have it overturned.
2 years before we even get to,
So I'd rather get it
less than 5%.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd
getting
rather get it now before it gets to that. I'd rather have Devin get a retrial. I think he has a better shot.
And she was clear. She was clear when she said that she's very, very happy that the lawyers are working together to come to a solution on Friday, and hopes that we can come to a resolution.
Okay. So what's the time frame we're looking at now?
We really don't know,
Yeah.
because she has been transferred. She is a circuit judge up in Flagler County now. So she's got a full docket that she's caring for in Flagler, plus any remaining cases here in Volusia County.
Okay.
I think she said 3 weeks, but we really, we don't know.
Yeah, we walked out of there with the understanding that Petry would get a response in approximately 2 weeks, and that Devin's response was more like a 3 week. So maybe 3-4 weeks.
All right. So that puts it at the end of February, beginning of
March.
March.
I was just going to say, hopefully, but that piece, that's not the only piece at play. There's also, as encouraged by the judge, the state and the defense attorneys talking and coming up with something else that can rectify the situation. Some sort of agreement that he can that they can do and that they can all agree to. So,
So what would that be? Like what are you hoping? Like what would that be? Like what deal or what are they trying to come together or work out? Like what would that be?
I don't know,
but a lesser charge.
Just a lesser charge, yeah. So you might be looking at 5 years instead of his whole life, kind of thing, or like I'm trying to.
I haven't been in the midst of those conversations.
Yeah, of course.
We don't know the answer.
Unfair.
We know that the judge has encouraged it from day one, and so we continue to encourage that as well. That discussion.
Yeah. What, if I may ask, what was Devin offered? What was his plea? If you can you talk about that?
10 to 20 plea was offered officially.
Okay.
On that particular day, it was, and you weren't even aware, right, Jimmy? That
they didn't. They told us that there would be no pleas ever made for anybody without first making the victims' families aware. But that ultimately, they made a plea offer to Devin, and as I understand it, it was that there would be no charges for the passing of my daughter and the passing of Kyle, but he would only be charged in the death of Ava.
Yeah, there was because they went back to chambers, and it was an extended period of time. The day that the plea was being offered, and on paper it was a 10 to 20. The second time that they came out, they pulled Devin and I in the back, David Janka, James Dissinger, and said, okay, potentially looking at a 0 to 5 if you take responsibility for the death of Ava Fellerman. It's kind of
Wow.
like the other passengers. And that is
Yeah.
verbatim what was said to my son, Devin Perkins. And he said, I was just as responsible for Allie as I was for Kyle, as I was for Ava.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not going to just single one person out. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
No.
what you're asking him to do is say that I'm responsible for the death of Ava, but somehow I'm not responsible for the other two. That's an internal challenge.
It makes no sense.
A mental and psychological challenge that somehow I can say that I'm going to go to prison for 10 years for one person's death in my car, but I didn't kill these people.
Yep.
Now, wrap your head around that I understand mathematically it benefited him, but psychologically what you're asking him to do is compartmentalize this and say, I killed this person, but I didn't kill these people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's not a situation where he was in a single car accident, where he overturned or where he hit a pole.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no
Right.
It would be
disagreement. But if not for the wrong way driver, the accident, we would all have our children today. We can't. Even Friday, it was heard in court. The what if?
Mm-hmm.
What if a mattress or a deer come out? But that didn't happen. What happened is we had a wrong way driver that from the first 911 call drove 8.9 miles in the wrong direction of a 4-lane divided highway with no headlights.
Yep.
And the third car, I was just reading his deposition or his written statement through the Florida Highway Patrol field notes that is available online. His field notes indicate he couldn't see anything, and he hit a stationary truck. The accident had already happened. The force of the impact, Devin's car overturned. Tom's truck or Joanna's truck actually was facing north across the lanes, and Thomas DeMarsico hit a stationary truck and his car was totaled.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, he was a tall guy. He said he had a seat way in the back, and when the airbag deployed, it didn't affect him. It was his girlfriend's car.
Mm-hmm. Somebody earlier in the chat asked what the conditions of the night was. It wasn't raining. It was a clear night, right? Yeah.
It was a dry night. There's absolutely no lighting there. It is pitch black in that area. There was some indication that there's a curve in the road, and again, there's an outline of where the accident happened. Mm-hmm. There's a map on the Save Devin website. You can look at it yourself. Tell me if you see a curve in the road. There's an outline from where the caller came in to where the accident happened. It is a road that Devin is familiar with. He lives off of State Road 44. He drives that road every single day. Mm-hmm. The road conditions were dry. It was dark.
Yeah.
And he was speeding.
And don't forget, it's not a crime that apparently I'm learning this the hard way. It's not a crime that a woman who sends her child home with someone else so she can stay at a bar and get intoxicated can hand her keys to another drunk to drive her home. Mm-hmm. That she bears, from a legal perspective, bears no responsibility. Not from a legal
considered a victim.
Well, not by me, but.
No, not by my
legally though. Legally,
that may have been the hardest thing in all of this was when the state marched her in there and her little smug ass sat up there and as if somehow we should feel sorry for her because she missed work or whatever.
I admire your restraint. That's all I can say.
I will tell you, it's been demonstrated more frequently in the last couple of years here than it's ever been in its lifetime.
Yeah. Because you're right. If you do anything, it's just going to make matters worse.
Correct.
You got to.
Yeah. Then we get the label. And let's keep all the negative focus on the people that deserve it.
Yep. Agreed. All right, guys. It's 10 o'clock. Do you want to take a few questions and we can let you go, or are you guys getting tired, or what do you want to do?
If there's questions, we'll answer them.
That's some questions. All right. I know Ken had a good question. I want to bring this one up about victim advocates. So Ken Rosenberg, I'd love to hear more about Mr. Dulin and, of course, Miss Maxwell, if she wishes, experiences with his victim advocate. Is that relationship still intact?
Well, you never got the benefit, the quote unquote benefit of a victim advocate.
No.
So I mean, listen, I think victim advocates are useless. At least in my experience, they haven't done anything for us. At best, they've caused confusion. At worst, they've been unresponsive. I mean, let me give you, Ken, let me tell you when Petry filed his motion to vacate his sentence, our victim advocate emailed us, and this basically, I don't have it in front of me. I wish I did, but it basically just said, wanted to let you know that Mr. Petry has filed a motion to vacate his sentence. Judge is going to have a hearing.
Jimmy, what happened? What happened at trial? Was the victims at Devin's trial?
That was the extent of our victim's advocate, was just to tell us that the murderer of our daughter was filing to get out. Now, I mean, all we heard was the guy who killed our daughter wants to go back, and we have to now go sit through a new trial. Yeah, like that. This was, and they were confused, and act like I'm expecting too much when I said, look, we requested a phone call, they told us they were too busy to talk to us at that point in time. And then we got a request for a Zoom meeting, I don't know, the next day, I believe. And I said to him, I said, guys, if there's anything I know about in sales is to set expectations. If you are aware that this is going to happen, then the minute we went through and he pled guilty and he was sentenced, and we had our follow-up meeting, you should have said, here's what you should expect next. He's going to probably look to vacate his sentence, and here's what it looks like, as opposed to just sending me some whimsical email that tells me he wants out of prison. And of course, I'm a protective husband as well, because my wife gets this and just turns into a marshmallow of shaking and crying because the person that murdered her daughter is now going to get this new trial, and we're going to have to go through this all over again. So, no, victim advocate, that's, as far as I'm concerned, the president can cut that position from the federal government or state government or anywhere else he wants, because it's a waste of taxpayer money, because they don't earn what they do, as far as I'm concerned.
Gotcha. That's one side of trials that we never really talk about. I've never really had a conversation with anybody or have seen that in the trials that we cover.
That's
Jules?
because they're worthless, so nobody has anything good to say.
The only experience that I ever had was in Devin's trial, where I overheard. I couldn't turn around, but I did overhear them asking people that were standing or sitting behind Devin to move to the prosecutor's side. Yeah, that was the victim's advocate, right?
We sat when we walked in for Devin's trial. We were told to sit on the state side, and of course we didn't. We sat on the defense side in support of Devin, and the victim's advocate came over and asked us to move, and we said no, we weren't interested in moving. But again, they're well aware of our position. So anyway, our experience has not been worth a damn at all.
Yeah, I gotcha. Jules, you have anything to say?
You guys, yes. Everybody in the chat, please, I implore everyone that watched this. Underneath the stream, there's a share button. You can share this to Facebook, to Twitter, to Instagram. I mean, hit up every one of your social media accounts. The word has got to get out there. I only found this out about this case because one of my Twitter followers sent me a direct message and said, would you please look into this? And that's what brings us here today. So the words got to get out. There's power in
In
numbers.
voices. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
And if you believe in Devin, then I'm asking you to please share this out. Get the word out there. Go to Victoria's website, savedevin.com. I mean, just do it. Read it. Everything that you need to know is there. And so, you know, and don't forget to hit that like button. On that note, Chris, I'm gonna let you finish up with Jimmy and Victoria. I think that, you know, you've got other things that you want to talk to them about. Victoria, it was a pleasure as usual.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking forward to talking to you again very soon. And you know, God bless you. You are the fiercest mama bear out there. So I'm going to remain positive, and I'm there for you. And Jimmy, I thank you so much for giving your time tonight. And most of all, thank you so much for opening up and letting us know what type of person, what the young lady, Allie, that you raised, because we didn't know. We didn't know who she was. And you opened that window up for us tonight. And I'm sure it wasn't an easy task, but thank you so much. And, you know, anything either one of you both know how to reach me. On that note, I'm going to say goodnight to the chat. Remember, share this out, get the word out. Chris, good night.
Good night, Jules. Thank you.
Leaving the studio.
All right, Jules. Thank you.
All right.
Sleep
Jules
well,
out.
Betty. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, this has been an amazing show. You guys are both strong, inspirational. Jimmy, you know, I didn't know you. I only saw you through you know, other news clips. We chatted a little bit via text, but hearing you talk, hearing your words, just reinvigorates my fight for Devin, for Allie, you know, for Kyle, for Ava. I mean, it's something that makes my blood boil when I hear these things that are happening. And I know it's not just you guys. This is happening all over, you know, so this is just like a microcosm of what's going on. And if we can affect change here, and I don't want to get too far off track, but it's like, if we can affect change here, it's like a pebble in a pond, you know, where else will this ripple out to? So to that end, Victoria and Jimmy, do you guys have any last words you want to leave us with? I mean, I know you probably have a lot, but I'll leave the floor for you guys.
Just my thanks. That's what I have. I have a big heartfelt thank you to everybody, because it's not my voice. It is the community. It's the support of everybody. And I wouldn't be here without the support and love from family. And I say family because we are a united family. I love the Dulins. I love the Mosers. I love, there's so many strong mamas that are out there, and people advocating through social media, and many that don't even know Devin. You know, that don't know his character, that don't know him personally, but look at what has happened, and that voice is growing louder. So thank you to everybody who has chimed in and supported.
Yeah, and I would just simply say in terms of sorry, my dog is snoring and I've never heard him.
I think I heard that too. Was that a snore?
I don't know what that is. He's a big bear, but goodness gracious. You know, Jules said, if you believe in Devin, I actually want to remove that and just say that if you believe that justice needs to be fair, then you really need to get behind this movement, because although our focus is Devin, the outcome of our focus is to benefit anybody who is going through something like this.
Yeah.
We need to believe, and we need to trust the judicial system.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, things like this that seem just so out there for the average person, I guess we don't necessarily, unless you're an expert in law, I guess you don't necessarily have to understand everything, but this one just seems like such a reach.
Yeah.
So I would say that this movement is beneficial to obviously to Devin, but to so many more beyond here. Maybe it won't have Victoria's voice and Jimmy's voice. Maybe it'll have Bill's and Sue's or Stacy's and Kim's or whatever. But it is these kind of voices that bring honesty, transparency, integrity, and to a system that we need to be able to rely on as citizens of this country and of whatever state you reside in. So that would be it. I would just say, don't make this purely about Devin. We'll make it about Devin, but everybody else needs to make it about right and wrong.
Right. Yeah. One of our mods only fans said earlier that smaller cases like this create case law. It's not the large cases that, you hear about the large cases, but it's these smaller cases that actually create case law, for better or for worse. And this is one of those, I think this is one of those moments in time that people will look back on, whichever way it turns out, so.
Well, it's certainly going to have some impact on, this will not go away.
Yeah. We will not go quietly into the evening. All right, guys, I'll let you go.
Hearts.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll have you on again. You guys are always welcome to come back on anytime.
Appreciate you.
All right.
And everybody listening out there, thank you. Big Mama Hearts.
Okay. All right, guys. All right. Thank you to Victoria and Jimmy and Jules and chat. You guys are fantastic. And to echo what Jules said, just get the word out. Get the word out. The court of public opinion is what we have at our disposal. We're not. Sometimes it's so frustrating when you hear stories like this and you want to do something. You want to just throw money at it, or you want to just bring in 1,000 people to do something, but what can we do? Well, we have 47 people watching now. We had 60 at one point. Just keep talking about it, share it. Like Jules said, go to savedevin.com, support Victoria, support Jimmy. I know he said he had a podcast and we didn't really talk about that, but go and support them and tell as many people as you can. And, at some point it's got to work out, it just has to work out. So on that, I'm going to say thank you to Aaron. Thank you to our mods, OnlyFan, Julie, Therapist, Jules, Hellcat, Widespread Panic. You guys are the best. And thank you, chat. There's a lot of new people in our chat, and I appreciate that. I have a feeling you guys probably came over from Victoria, but thank you guys. And please just keep getting the word out. And on that, I am going to remove myself from the stream, and I think Aaron is going to play the exit music. So I will see you guys tomorrow, and have a good night. And hug your loved ones. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you guys down the road. Take care. Bye.